This is my grandmother and grandfather, and our family is from Central California, just outside of Yosemite. And my grandmother's side of the family, they homesteaded there 1853 on the northern road into Yosemite. And so this was my dad and my mom and me and my siblings as a kid. My dad was like, you got to lift the cow every day and you'll get stronger because the cows only grow up by an increment. But we never could manage to get it all the way up there. But this was my early childhood. We would go out into the high country with burros in the Sierras, and that was my introduction to it. And it sort of, one thing led to another, hiking up in the mountains and my parents lining us up like organ pipes, and I'm the kid in the second one from the left there, and my younger brother, two sisters, and my mother and father. And so our getting outdoors was a really great thing that we did together as a family, and it was always something very special. But being where I was in that area, I went right into climbing in Yosemite, which is a wonderful place. It's 3,000 feet of granite walls and a very unique feature. And it's something that when I was first climbing there, I realized what made this a unique place was the glaciers that were in there and the climbing that went with it. And at the time, learning from elders, mentors, this is Mug Stump, climbing Alaska, doing a bunch of different things. But it was always this journey, this goal of exploration, going out there and challenging myself. Something like this, skiing into the Alaska range. That was just about 25 years ago. Time flies. And then climbing up these things and just sort of scaring ourselves. But by going in there and skiing into it, you really land. And this, what I do as a professional climber, I like to get out there and inspire people to care about the planet and to get out and challenge themselves. And if you live in a controlled environment like we are here with the HVAC humming and we get in a car and everything is sort of taken care of us, we really don't understand what's going on out there. But if you're dragging a sled across a kayak filled with all your provisions across an island, you really kind of understand what the ocean is doing and some of the dynamics that are in there. So sort of on this little narrow thing, we're still walking, and then we'd have these open leads in there. And it's this concept that if you go outdoors and you thermoregulate, you understand temperature. And I've never met John Boehner, but he has a nice tan, but I don't think it comes from climbing at altitude. And, well, I mean, yeah, it's right. It comes from, it's artificial. But anyways, if he were to get out and sweat and then freeze and then get hot and then get cold and just experience what it means to thermoregulate as a human, then there might be some more understanding to that. And that's kind of this overall picture that we have in there. So, John, I'll take you out climbing any day you like. So it would be a good adventure. But that was, I started out climbing at age 14, and by 1988, I was doing expeditions full time, and part of it was trips to Everest. 3 separate Everest expeditions, this one in 1999 when I discovered the body of George Mallory. And then 2007, when we did a film recreation about the life of George Mallory, and then again in 2012. But every time you go into one of these environments, particularly like Everest, it puts the human condition into a prism, because all of a sudden you're looking at the fact that you have to survive up there. Oxygen is rare, and you have a very inhospitable climate, but it's a very delicate climate at the same time. Even though this picture from 2012, when there was massive lines of people moving up at the same time, it's such a harsh environment. It's so forbidding that we think that it's steel, it's bulletproof, but it's actually very delicate. And I would, not being a scientist, but something like the Amazon might be able to come back from an impact quicker than something up here where there really isn't any life form except for humans and what humans leave behind, which is, these are fuel canisters and rubbish. This is at the South Pole. They're doing a good job of bringing it down, but then there's also humans die up there, which is a pretty harsh reality. That's what climbing is. Altitude climbing is probably one of the most dangerous sports there is, but it also makes you appreciate life and live in the moment, which I think is something really good. It's a high price to pay for that kind of lesson, but it's something that I've learned. But the big challenge with Everest is oxygen. This is the going up in compressed cylinders, carrying it up through the ice fall. And when it was first climbed, it was oxygen was used by Tenzing Norgay and Sir Edmund Hillary. And it wasn't until 1978 when Messner came and was able to climb Everest without supplemental oxygen, sort of turned that paradigm around on it. But what's interesting, when we look back at the historical archives, the first Everest expeditions came in 1921, and with each subsequent expedition, there were photographs taken in the mountains. And these photographs, they were there primarily to document it. There was something that would get people out there and say, okay, this is what we had seen, this is the story of what we're doing. And now we use this, this research, this volume of data that they have, that they inadvertently took just for fun or for recreation or for documenting their trip, and then being able to use that to help measure glaciers. So there's 3 different ways that general broad ways that you can look at them. One is the historical repeat photography. So you'll find a photograph from Vittorio Sella in the Karakoram in 1899 when he was there. Then you go back to the same spot and you find the tripod, you take a picture, and you can see that change. The other one that I work with, Jim Balog out of Boulder, Colorado, in the Extreme Ice Survey, is time-lapse photography. And this is setting up digital cameras with a computer and a robot on their computer that advances the picture every half hour. And these are the setups in here that create the film on that. And then the third way to look at glaciers is with satellites in IR. And this helps us understand the volume of the glacier, not just the length of it, but how deep it is and how much is it shrinking and how much is it deflating on that. So on Everest, it's great because it's this super iconic peak. People will, if you say mountains, they'll know about mountains in the first place. And so this is one of the first steps of looking at historical repeat photography. And this photograph was taken in 1956, and it was a really beautiful sepia black and white picture. But we fast forward to this picture was taken in 2010, and so that's we're not even that many years forward to backwards. But if we look here, and let me find the cursor here on my screen. When you're split screen, it goes side to side. But oh, it was on there. I didn't see it. But anyways, look here at the this Nuptse is the peak on the right. Lhotse is in the background. Everest is on the left, and coming down the north flank of Nuptse, you can look into there and you can see how much volume of ice is down there, the size of that avalanche apron, the size of the penitentes in the lower Khumbu as it turns that corner, and then the ice that's hanging up there on the high altitude cryosphere. Now, we look at it again, you can see how anemic it's looking in contrast to that over a period of time. So in working with the EIS, this is setting the camera up there, getting the permit from the government in Paul and getting everything squared away, doing the expedition so when you're up there to work on it, and then seeing this as the work of a 2-year time lapse. So the shadow line you see there isn't the afternoon sun, it's the seasonal azimuth of the sun. So more shadow, you're in winter, and less shadow, but it goes back up and it comes back down. And a lot of these things, when we look at them and compare these snapshots with the images that were taken in the 50s, you can see how drastically the glacier has receded. And using these visual images, this is a picture of Namche Bazaar, the capital of the Khumbu in 1963, and this is where it is today. And going back to the last time clip that we saw, that is one of the most obvious physical manifestations of a changing climate is a receding glacier. And when you look at those time lapses, you don't have to have a degree in science to put 1 and 2 together. It's like watching an ice cream melt on the sidewalk. So you could be a poor person in sub-Saharan Africa and you will understand that. Whereas if you try to point out a ocean acidification, how that process works, or what global CO2 is, you really have a big thing. I love this advertisement. It's from 1962, the year I was born, Humble Oil. And they, each day Humble supplies enough energy to melt 7 million tons of glacier with an exclamation mark. And they didn't realize that was the collateral cost of burning oil was melting glaciers. We just didn't know that at that time. But now that we have a better and more accurate way of looking at things here, we have a really good opportunity to see how this is. This is almost a 5-year period of the Columbia Glacier. Photographs are taken every half hour. They're then stitched together. You can see the change in the seasons. But it's a ton of data in there. You can see how it's a tidewater glacier. It's moving up and down, pulsating with the tides moving up, big chunks breaking off. camera is out of the place. Now we have to pan it back, and we're looking off. We've already gone out of frame, and we'll do this 4 times in this one period here. So it's really a compelling point there that we can look at and say, okay, this is what it is. Because there's probably 3 main ways that we can understand the anthropogenic impact on the climate. The global CO2 levels, and then ocean acidification and receding glaciers. And CO2 levels and ocean acidification, I have to trust scientists, which I do. The station that NOAA runs on Mauna Kea they're measuring CO2 in the atmosphere, and I trust them. I know they're doing the right thing. Same thing with the ocean. But with this, anyone can understand that. And that's why we need to get the message of what's going on here out to the greater lake. And you can see now how far back we are and how the glacier, when it melts out this much and there's more detritus on the top of it, it has a lower albedo factor. More sun comes into it. More of it heats up, and it kind of gets it all in there. So, and the challenge with this is CO2. It is, all of us are well familiar with the CO2 hockey level chart, which, I mean, we can sit there and have great debates on it, but I mean, I think we're doing something really, really crazy, and we need to be aware of it. And then ocean acidification, which is based on chemistry. So as the consumption of CO2 is absorbed in the ocean, it's not allowing the calcification. So the coral reefs and the shells and all that. And a lot of what the future is predicting for the oceans is pretty dire. In addition to what we see here, the storms. This is all news clips from Hurricane Sandy. And I mean, it's sort of like a wake-up call for all of us. Like, hey, this is a pretty crazy thing when you get out there. Of course, it was 40 years ago that it was 1969 that we landed on the moon, and that 45 years ago, it was a pretty significant point. And as a kid, I was totally excited about it. And from that, we had this perspective. For the first time, we were able to look at our home, our planet there in the sky. And now with satellites cruising overhead, we can see, these are images from Google, the use of energy by humans. And it's basically where there's industry, where there's population, where there's civilization, things are glowing. So you can see the contrast between the Sahara, the Congo, and then Europe way to the north there. Looking over to Asia, you can see the relative industrialization of Japan, and then that stark contrast between South Korea and North Korea. Australia, still mostly limited to the coast there. And then here we are in the United States with our energy grid and where we're burning fuel and things like that. It's a great way to have these visual understandings of what we're doing. But it comes down to, as citizens of the United States, we're about 4% of the world's population, burning anywhere from 25 to 30% of the world's energy. And if the other 7 billion people, if we have 7.3 billion people on our planet, we'll say approximately 7 billion, we'd need about 8 planets to run at this level with this. So, which is a real tricky thing. So I've got the 2-minute line. I'm going to go fast here. But whereas the Humble Oil was said, okay, we melt glaciers, now we have the coal is clean campaign. And then recently, this is near in our state on May 8th, the state of Wyoming rejects science standards and won't teach man-made climate. And to me, this is, I mean, they're an energy state. Wyoming should embrace wind and solar, coal. I mean, they are the most energy-rich state in the union. They really have a chance on this. And it'd be great to see a team of lawyers take this up with the state of Wyoming, because from my view, you're being negligent to send students out into the world without understanding this. You just might as well be telling them that this is reality out there, because it's really a very, very different thing. And you're welcome to believe whatever you want, but if you're there in Wyoming, you're not going to get a chance for it. But on the upside, a couple things. Pope Francis came out in May of this year and to safeguard creation, because if we destroy creation, creation will destroy us, and never forget this. And this is a really strong stance on there that we are part of this. And again, it's finding these ways that we can translate this energy challenge that we're in, where we are now, to reach more people so they can understand it. I do this because I love my family. I know that for the next 40 years I'll have plenty of carbon, but what's it going to be like for all of them in the future? And last minute, this is an idea that I had sitting in a tent in Antarctica about 12 years ago. So we've got a body of water, and we have them out and around places like San Diego, Saudi Arabia, anything like that. And you have to pump water up out of the ocean, and then you get a massive solar still. So you have a circular array of mirrors, and that puts it right in the center of this one big massive still. And so you pump the salt water, you flash boil it, you condense it, which turns it into fresh water, run a turbine on it, which creates electricity, and then the residual of that, every evening you'd have a ton of salt to do with. So you could either put the salt back in the ocean or you'd have it there. The specter of the Brocken, and we're on time.